Mr. Brown, are we ready to begin?
It says live on top there. I don't know if that.
Good afternoon. My name is James Ragland. I serve as the co-chairman of the Audit and Accountability Committee with my partner, co-chair board member Beckerly. We'd like to welcome you to today's meeting of the Audit and Accountability Committee. Madam Auditor, could you please call the roll?
Yes. Chair Ragland.
Here.
Co-chair Beckerly.
Here.
Mr. Grant.
Here.
Mr. Vajon. Ms. Adair. Mr. Jordan.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Auditor. Our first order of business is to approve the meeting minutes from the August 27th, the Audit and Accountability Committee. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I second.
Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, Madam Auditor, could you please call the roll?
Chair Ragland.
Yes.
Co-chair Beckerly.
Yes.
Mr. Grant.
Yes.
Mr. Jordan.
Yes.
And that motion carries.
Thank you, Madam Auditor. I do want to announce the president of Mr. Vajon. Thank you for joining us today, sir. We missed you last month. Good to see you.
Hello, Mr. Vajon. I'm sorry, I didn't notice you joined us.
All right. Item number one on today's agenda is committee operations. We have no report for committee operations, so we will move directly to item two. It's the Office of Internal Audit report. We have no request for release of reports. And so I'm going to pass it to Auditor Smith for our next item.
Oh, thank you. At the tail end of our last meeting, I had brought up an item that I wanted to get more information and more feedback from the committee on. And that item was different ways to go about providing audit services to our IT function. As most of you all are aware, there are 6 auditors on my staff. I do not carry a segment, so that leaves basically 4 auditors who are trying to provide audit coverage for all of the operations and all of the different departments of the district. And what we have done in the past as far as IT is concerned, because we did not have a chief information officer, we have outsourced that function. And in the past, we have worked with a CPA firm who has done a dedicated risk assessment on IT. They had also recommended that we have a vulnerability and penetration test on an annual basis. They had also made just a host of recommendations that in the past, I believe, have benefited the district and the IT department. As we have grown and as we have become basically in this virtual environment, I am trying to determine if that is the best way moving forward to continue to provide services to the IT function. I had mentioned, in the past we have outsourced. Sometimes we have worked hand in hand with the outsource firm. They'll work with my staff, they'll take the lead, and we'll do some type of testing under their direction, because in all honesty, it is a very complex area, and I don't feel that we quite yet have that expertise. What we have not done, which is what I am also considering, is adding to our function a dedicated IT auditor. So right now, when there are projects going on, I pull from my current staff. I normally pull from Terry and from Dion to basically go and sit in on any types of IT projects that are going on, such as we were looking at how to best utilize our ERP system or Munis system. I would pull for Terry and Dion to go and sit in on those, which has worked, but I think as large as IT is and as important as that area is to not just our organization, but to all organizations, I would like to look at having a dedicated source on my staff to serve IT. But as I said, because I've never had that function before, I am open to other suggestions of how to provide coverage. So that was basically kind of where I left off last month, and because of the time constraints, we decided to kind of postpone that conversation to give it the due diligence that it really deserves. So I'm just putting that back out for the committee. I would like to, however you want to handle it, I would like to just kind of hear, your thoughts, knowing, we are at one point maybe $4 billion operation. Our technology needs have changed and are constantly changing. So I just want to have that conversation as far as maybe I'm missing something. There might be some combination that I have not thought of. I would love to hear your experience and your thoughts on this subject.
So I guess my first question to the committee, do any of you have current best practices that you could recommend in a situation like this? I mean, we've had to change over things quite quickly. And so do you know of any way that you see that's working right now that could help us?
I mean, this is Greg. I guess I would offer up a couple of thoughts and defer to Mr. Grant, Mr. Vajon. I guess one would be to have someone come in and do a risk assessment of the technology infrastructure and current operations to determine where the most critical needs would be. So that would be something. And I think in the past, I believe, Carolyn, we have used Schneider Downs just as an option to do that. The two questions I would have as far as bringing somebody on board full time, one would be, what would you estimate the annual hourly need in terms of, is it a full-time FTE, et cetera? Then I would offer up that for someone to be autonomous on their own with not needing a lot of technical oversight, you will probably need somebody with, I'd say, 7 to 8 years experience. And again, I think trying to weigh those two, somebody with only 3 or 4 years out of, say, the Big Four or something, that's not going to, I don't think, solve your challenge. They won't have enough experience and latitude to offer insight. So it might be something that you step into with the co-sourcing, bringing somebody on board, do a risk assessment, bring somebody experienced, or if you decide to go the staffing route, is some combination of somebody on board and some co-sourcing so they can learn along the way. So that would be my initial thoughts, and I'll defer to the others.
Well, my thoughts were similar on that line. It's more of a cost benefit. Right now, to bring somebody in with the breadth of knowledge you need to service the IT department, they would probably have to be fairly experienced and then stay up to date on, across all those different genres of IT. And I won't get into, I mean, that's more Greg and Vajon's area. But to bring that in-house, is a question of, is it going to be beneficial, and will they be able to really service one person be able to service it versus having to outsource, if you outsource it and have that breadth of knowledge that you would get, and maybe more targeted towards the IT issue at that time. So, it's a question of, to me, it's more of a cost benefit in terms of that analysis that you have to make.
Anyone else from the committee have some thoughts?
I think you need to unmute yourself. Mr. Vajan.
Oh, okay, yes. Mr.
There we go. I
Vajan?
apologize. Struggling with technology today, but that's all right. It happens to everybody, folks. I guess I would echo Mr. Jordan's recommendation on making sure that we are performing an annual risk assessment at least. I think if you look at both as as a person that works in technology and both as a parent of three young boys that are actually going through some of the challenges of remote learning right now, I'm recognizing how important technology is in educating our young folks. And I think from that aspect, having some kind of process or such as a risk assessment that helps us identify things that would be risks for the district achieving its goal, right, which is educating and enabling really well-rounded young professionals. So apologies if I'm not summarizing that in the right way. Technology plays a critical role with that. Something that also has been the importance of technology has been kind of raised also with the pandemic. And I think that we should be at least focusing on that as a district on an annual basis. One thing that, I echo kind of also what Greg said, it will be difficult, right, as you have to get somebody that's well versed and rounded with multiple years of experience. And that is a cost benefit analysis, right? If you are to expand the audit function with that skill set. The one thing that audit already kind of has and is a benefit and an asset to the districts is that discipline of, as audits are performed, tracking findings and providing kind of reporting out of band from management of what the status is on remediation of some of these items, right? So hopefully that helps.
And Chair Brackman, I do see that our CIO is on the call. So if you don't mind, if she has anything that she would like to say, I thought that would be definitely like to hear from her.
Absolutely, Ms.
Beat me
good to have
to
you.
it.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Madam Co-Chair. Were you saying something, Madam Co-Chair?
No, Karen took the words right out of my mouth.
Yes, absolutely. Ms.
Thank
Vierney?
you, Chair, Board Member Ragland, and Co-Chair, Board Member Beckerly, and Internal Auditor Carolyn Smith. I want to add something, and I really heard what the committee members said, and I respect that. But large organizations our size have a dedicated IT auditor, because you're not looking at auditing as a function of, it's not a set of gotchas, right? It's more as internal audit is more a function of help. You help us before there's a gotcha. In that effect, while, like I said, I respect the committee members' opinion on doing a thorough analysis, a lot of large organizations our size have a dedicated IT auditor because they understand the IT functions and they work with IT well. Ms. Smith's staff have been extremely very cooperative with us, but at times, they probably read something in a magazine and then they react to it versus having a deep understanding of what it really means. And we could also use with, we've addressed a lot of gaps, I believe, over the year. Now we're looking for continuous improvement. So if there's a dedicated IT auditor, they can give us those tips and tricks for continuous improvement as well. So it's more than a gotcha, it's more of a partner by our side to ensure in this day and world, we are staying true to, our security and safety in the district. Not only that, other audit function, other IT functions too, right? I'm talking about services we give. Should we be giving more or less? It'll be an end-to-end audit, and I would let Ms. Smith talk to how she sees them employed full-time and all that, because she might have other extra duties that an auditor performs as an auditor, not just IT. They may have to do other things as well. But if you ask for my opinion, I would support this ask completely, because I would gain as a chief of IT and as an IT organization a lot of value from having a dedicated resource like that.
Thank you so much, Ms. Virani. Have you, my question is to Auditor Smith. Have you begun maybe outlining what a job description might look like for this type of resource? Maybe have had some preliminary discussions with HR, or what is your process regarding what you think you could come up with regarding a job description, and really just kind of lining out what that person's day-to-day work would look like?
I've had some very preliminary conversations with HR. Actually, I think we were actually still working on site when I had kind of reached out just to kind of figure out, okay, what would this type of person with this type of skill set, being the accountant, what would it cost? What are we looking at as far as a competitive salary? And I know there's a lot of training. Let me just kind of back up. The reason why we have always outsourced it in the past is because of the items that Mr. Grant hit upon. For an organization of our size, it would not be beneficial to bring in someone who doesn't have the breadth and the skill and the experience to basically be able to work a lot on their own. Because I would have the ability to guide them as far as, doing audits and standards and so on and so forth. But when it comes to the technical aspects of information and technology, I would be relying on their experience. So I have had a conversation with HR, and they did give me some preliminary, very rough, well, if you're looking at someone with this type of experience, this is kind of what you're looking at. And I have done some research as far as different types of functions. My initial thought was to also use them in the accountability realm. Now IT and accountability do work very, very close together. So I was looking at, starting off, splitting them in those two areas. And then as time, goes on, I have no doubt that there will be a positive return on investment. And also, you can't see it, but I do have a copy of the last, you can't see it anyway, risk assessment that we had, and that was done in 2017. And in this day and age, that's quite a long time to not have a dedicated IT risk assessment done. So all of those things, I'm kind of thinking about the best way to accomplish this. And I don't have I do definitely want to, if nothing else, have the IT risk assessment done sooner rather than later. But as far as possibly expanding the department, I'm in no hurry. That's why I wanted to have the conversation and take the time to get the feedback and then weigh the pros and cons. So, and possibly come back at a later date with having drilled down all the information and presented something to the committee. But I'm not asking for anything as far as a yay or a nay on expanding the department. But I just want to, to let you all know where my thoughts are, having done this at least since 2017, if not earlier, as far as the outsourcing. And
I mean, Carol, I would absolutely agree with Ms. Virani's comments. I think given the size of the district, it absolutely could warrant the full-time staff. It does become a budgetary question. I think to get somebody that can be freestanding, competent, that could be providing advisory services, measure twice and cut once, and compliant by design, and those are all absolutely best in class practices. I guess I'd be interested in what was the type of market data, if you could share, if you feel comfortable with the broader group of what HR was providing you, because I could certainly give you my insights to what's in the marketplace right now. For somebody, if I were to take somebody from my team that would say 7 or 8 years, that I'm comfortable let them go on their own. I certainly can give you some comparative market data. I'm sure as others could as well.
Yeah, they gave me a range of for what I was looking at, low 100 up to 122. And that doesn't include, you know, the benefits or anything like that.
Right.
So
And how many years experience were you looking at with them?
I believe I'd have to look and see, but I believe I told them 5.
Okay, that's probably on the on the high end for 5. I guess if I was thinking about somebody with 7 to 8 years, I mean that would be at the high end. So I'd be probably looking in the go to market for a 7-year person at probably 125 plus incentives and a benefit package, and that's probably at the maybe not quite the midpoint, but. And I'd be curious if Vajon or Mr. Grant had any other thoughts on that.
I'm not really in the IT market, just on the audit side, but you know, the audit staff are going probably in that range, but IT it's more specialized.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think if we're talking about a IT auditor type role with 5 years experience, that seems about, you know, but yeah, maybe a little bit high on that range, what I would expect, depending on where you're looking to hire. If you're looking for somebody who has a little bit broader spectrum of knowledge, such as more cybersecurity type controls, understanding, and more in-depth technical knowledge, that you're probably starting to get into that over 100K range. If you're looking for somebody 7 to 8 years of experience, like we mentioned earlier, and that's actual kind of cybersecurity experience, yeah, you're starting probably to hit closer to that mid between the 100 and 122 and kind of creeping up. I mean, it's just the nature is the market is fairly competitive, and there's a general lack of resources from a cybersecurity standpoint. So it would be more discussing and fine tuning what we're actually looking to get out of the role and what their function is, right? Because you can always supplement some of the higher, or more advanced technical knowledge, but you need somebody with the general baseline understanding of the subject matter.
Yeah, and then I think that the more you get into the more experienced technical expertise, people are also looking at career path. What's the next opportunity? Otherwise, you could find yourself in a situation where somebody may come in and spend 3 years with you, and then move on, and you're kind of back again.
And that's what a lot of my colleagues from the larger school districts that do have IT audit functions, that is exactly the problem that they're having. They're saying as soon as they get somebody who has like 2 or 3 years experience, they leave and go someplace else. So I know it would be, I know there would be challenges. I know there's not like a boatload of, IT auditors just kind of waiting to, come and work. So I know I have the challenges ahead of me, and I'll have to double check as far as what I asked them to look at. I think I said I definitely did not want entry level. I wanted like mid-level, and those were the ranges that, I was given. So it sounds like it will be on the high end for 5 years, but maybe, mid to low for someone 7 years and more specialized.
I see that way, and I think I was going to say Verti may have a point of view. Absolutely.
So
Madam Co-Chair.
Well, let Wanda talk first because she was in the middle.
Okay.
Sorry. I was going to say I worked for the state of Ohio for 8 years, and the state has a bigger IT audit presence, and but a lot of the numbers we are talking about, probably in the private sector, I would still say it's on the high end. Especially if you're targeting already a public sector employee, you may get longevity out of them, and the schools definitely pay better than the state of Ohio. So you may be able to lure some local talent from there as well. That's from my experience with the state.
Now to you, Carol. I'm sorry.
I guess the more I'm thinking about this, especially in terms of all of the issues we're experiencing with the pandemic and the virtual learning, and it's almost as though we can't afford not to have someone in Carolyn's shop who's really focusing on this. and it also sounds like, and I guess this is a question I have, Wanda, it sounded to me like you would perceive this person, it sounded like you would perceive this person as assisting you on keeping a handle on things.
I would perceive this person has joined at the hip with us, maintaining that autonomy to tell us what's wrong, at the same time guide us towards what's right too, right? Like I said, the internal audit function, I look at it as somebody that's like a guide, a mentor function, if you will, to kind of say, hey, you guys are, well, fix these are the gaps you already have, but it's kind of like a start, stop, continue list. Start doing these things so you can get better at it, continuous improvement. Stop doing these things because you're leaving these gaps wide open, you need to fill them. Continue doing what you're doing, and you're doing it well, but continue doing it, don't stop doing it. Kind of that guide and mentor, if you will. And typically that's the kind of function IT auditors provide. They do find issues, and that is a major function, because you don't want an external auditor to come and find issues with you. You want the internal audit team to help you overcome those issues. And at the same time, also look at that start, stop, continue list, if you will.
That's really good. So let me ask this, Madam Auditor, if you think that it would be beneficial, since we've got some preliminary information from HR, maybe you can have some time with Ms. Vierny in hatching out what a job description and would look like. Maybe come back to the committee at a date of your choosing, and then have something in front of us that we could discuss before we start talking about budgetary needs and what we're going to need to do on the other side. But if we're looking at something, and I really would like to get the committee's blessing on whatever it is that you would come up with. But it seems like Ms. Vierny has some really good ideas that could probably help you guys come up with a good job description, if that could be the process that we would follow.
That sounds good to me. In the meantime, my current budget does have enough resources, I believe, to do an outsource for the risk assessment, which we haven't had done in quite some time. So I will also start doing some preliminary work as far as the best way to go about and get that covered, which will be separate. I'm not going to wait, for the outcomes of this conversation. The budget does allow for the outsourcing. So I'll go through the regular board process as far as engaging, a firm to come in and to do that type of work. But yeah, I would love to work with my colleague there and get some better kind of put some guardrails around this as far as, what to really expect given this job market. I would love, someone like a Mr. Vajon, but I don't think our budget can handle it. So.
Well, we can start working on recruiting him.
Yeah, you're being actively recruited in the committee meeting.
Dr. Dixon, I'm kind of just curious. Dr. Dixon, do you have a reaction one way or another?
Yeah, question. I know, Carolyn, you stated there have not been a risk assessment done in quite some time.
In IT.
In IT, correct. So, and we've not had a CIO in quite, I think it's been several years since they've had a CIO. I'm not sure how many years, but I think at least over 5, I think, that we've not had a CIO. Maybe 5 or more. And so is there any particular reason why we've not had one prior to now? And then is the reason why we want to have the risk assessment now is because we're in this virtual learning space now? And the reason I ask, because I've stated that I want us to move to become a 1-to-1 district by 2023. And so, and I have Wandana and the team working on what would be our device as we begin to decide what would be the district device of choice. And then once that committee makes that decision, then we'll start rolling out a plan of purchasing, et cetera. So I'm just trying to figure out, which comes first, right? Are we assessing risk before we get this overall plan? Or are we assessing risk because we have no plan and we are, we've kind of moved toward this whole virtual setting more quickly than we imagine. So I'm just trying the timing, because if we have a risk assessment, which I agree, we have to, challenge, we have to find out what our risk is. But right now, the technology today is going to be very different with the future in a couple of years, because we will have a plan. Then very different from the past, because there was no plan. There was no plan. There was not even there was not even a chief, IT person. So I'm just trying to gauge, is this person important to have? Sounds like it is, from both sides. I just want to know if we move forward with this risk assessment, knowing that we still have a plan forthcoming, would this risk assessment advise us on what we plan to do in the future? And should it halt that work that the committee is doing now? Just trying to gauge and get some more information around that. And then the last piece is, when we think about bringing additional people to the entire organization in their function, how do we introduce that to the organization and make sure that that person's function, as some others said, is broader if needed than just IT? Or is it just for IT? I think that would be good, because there's going to be more technology. This organization is going to be tethered to technology from here on out. So maybe a broader scope, and maybe that's something that we can talk about offline, would be critical to this, because we may find that it's not just one person we need as we move forward. It may be some other ancillary staff that we may need to accompany this.
Yeah, for your first question, the reason why there was not a risk assessment done since 2017 is because I wanted to give the IT department time to address the issues that were noted. It just did not seem to be beneficial to just continue to go in and to do these reviews, knowing the challenges that they were facing. So that was the main reason as to, we want to give you time to address what we identified in 2017. And we have done some follow-up on those issues. But now, with the changing environment and with a dedicated, CIO, and not having had one done in such a long time, I just would think we're a little bit overdue. I think the ideal situation is to have a IT risk assessment done every year, because that world is changing so rapidly. There are probably things that we identified in 2017 that are just obsolete now. I know one of the big things we kept harping on was to get rid of our Windows XP systems or something along those lines. Well, that's not even an issue anymore, because Microsoft doesn't support XP systems anymore. So it's those types of reasons that we delayed on continuing to have these risk assessments done. But my thinking is, I don't think this work would impact moving forward with the goal of having a one-to-one device for each student. There might even be some, recommendations that might actually benefit. Right now I can't think of, but there might even be some beneficial recommendations that will come from the risk assessment. And the risk assessment would not be dependent upon the expansion of the department. I have the budget now to just go ahead and outsource the risk assessment, as we have done in the past, working with IT and working with my staff, to kind of scope it out. And we try to always be mindful of the workload that everyone in the organization has on them, when we're doing these things. Like I said, that was one of the reasons why we didn't continue to just have people come in and do these risk assessments, just being mindful of all the changes that were going on, in IT at that point in time. Your last, you have to help me, your last question. I don't know, right now, I wouldn't be comfortable identifying more than just one person to kind of start this process and to get it off the ground. I do, because of how large IT is and how large accountability is, the person would be pulled into at least both of those areas right off the bat. That there would be enough in those two areas to keep someone busy. And like I said, we were just talking earlier about the evaluation of the ERP and how effective, we are using that, instead of having right now, as I do, I pull either Terry or Dion to be part of those teams. This is something that they could also do.
Okay.
So, and I definitely want to make sure that, I keep you in the loop and have a conversation with you also.
Yeah, thank you. Okay.
Oops. So it sounds to me like we're concluding that starting the risk assessment now is important, but making sure it doesn't somehow get in the way of moving forward. We don't want it to have the unintended consequence of stopping progress on going one-to-one. Is that sort of what we're saying here?
Yeah, I guess that, the
Okay.
risk assessment, yeah, I think we're saying that, if we're moving a plan and then we see that we have some other risks, I mean, that could come with a program, a device, or any of those type of controls. I just don't, and I may be in the wrong ball field, but I just want to make sure it doesn't hinder or just going to support that work. That's all I'm saying. If it's going to support it, let's do it. If it's not, because, Wanda has only been on the team 7 months, in the role, right? So, we've had a chief for 7 months, and then we have some things that haven't been addressed since 2017. So I can understand the frustration that Carolyn has. I just, and there's a lot of work because we're moving towards more technology, more programming. And I just want to make sure that we, that we're kind of working in concert. It sounds like Carolyn and Wanda have been discussing, and it looks like we have a scope of what that will look like.
Yeah.
Right, and I think that scope will be key.
Yeah.
We have to be very intentional about that.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, just to add to it, right when Vandala and I were getting ready to meet, is right when the governor shut down the schools. we had a meeting set up, and we were going to meet and talk about all these types of things. And that's when COVID really took off. So we just did not have time to do that. So like I said, it's not something, it's waited all this time. I definitely want to be sensitive to what everybody has on their plate. But I also do feel strongly that, this will be beneficial. I don't see any way that it could hinder, the plans as far as the one-to-one devices for our students.
Well, and I also feel like it's such a vast area. There's plenty of ways to, there's plenty to focus on. Let's put it that way. Because it flows into accountability. It flows into payroll. It flows into lots of other areas that are all IT.
Yeah,
it's
food
vast.
service, our
Right.
heating system, our
Oh, yeah,
busing
yeah.
system, transportation. It touches every aspect of our operations.
So Carolyn, and does it impact Munis and the other assessments that we have going, or do they work in concert? I see those are some, because we got some other things that's
right.
happening. And so that's why I said, just making sure everything is flowing. And I'm not sure if we need to scope that out. Do we need to kind of just meet protected and get a big whiteboard and say, hey, we have Munis, we have this, what interacts with with what? So that we're not doing duplication of services, and then we're not, competing with one another. And because there's so many varied programs with payroll, HR, as been mentioned.
Right. In the past, when and I just kind of briefly looked through this, I was in the office Tuesday trying to do some things, and I ran across this, and this did touch upon basically all of our systems. There were, they identified the risk associated, with Munis, Infinite Campus. It touched on, all the systems throughout the district, and that was in 2017. And I don't, I'm quite sure there's been some news things that have come on board since then. So I really do think it is overdue, and we really were waiting because we wanted to give IT, the time to, really thoroughly address these things versus just a check mark and saying, okay, yeah, these are done. So that's why it hasn't been done since 17. But I don't have much more to add. I think, getting together with Bandala and superintendent and HR, and just at least putting on paper what a position would look like, is what I'm taking from this meeting. Go ahead and do the risk assessment, do our normal outsourcing channel, and then to work with those different parties to see, what a dedicated IT resource in our department would look like.
And I guess maybe, and this is picking up on some themes of previous conversations this week, and really coordinating our efforts and making sure we're all touching base so that we're not either, not communicating or not overstepping, and we're doing it in the right priority, because that sounds to be like it'll be critical in this instance, and also it'll get us where we all want to be. And I just have one other thing to say. Wanda, has it been the longest 7 months of your life?
You didn't hear me laugh. But it has been the most rewarding 7 months of my life. I see it every
That's
day.
what we like to hear.
The faces of our students. One of our principals, couple of our principals shared with me when the students received the new Chromebooks. They've never had anything new. And, they were so excited, and that brought tears to my eyes. That's so rewarding, 7 months. Yes, very hard 7 months, but very rewarding. So, thank you.
No, thank you. And thank you for sharing that. Because it really does kind of put everything that we do in perspective. Frankly, we just heard her say that the students had never had anything new. And sometimes, a lot of the blessings that we all receive, we might take for granted. But to see a young person get something new that's coming from this district and our wonderful community partners that have helped us be able to do this, and that it's going to be used for something so transformative for them, a proper education. That is what's so important, and that's literally why we are here. So thank you for sharing that little nook. That really hit home for me.
Yeah, I have one other quick.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Madam Co-Chair, go for it.
Oh, I didn't know. Picking up on something Mr. Vajan said that I think is really critical is, and it was in the context of him talking about his own children and doing the online learning and realizing how technology is really so critical to that process. And then what you just said, James, about it being transformational. It is such a game changer to get these devices in every student's hand in terms of the trajectory of their learning and their lives. And to the point that there's a risk if we don't do it well, when we're talking about risk assessment, because if you're just, I want to say whittling around the edges, but that's not quite right. If you're only like I'm sure I'm probably at 10% capacity in terms of what my iPhone is capable of doing and what I actually do with it, because I'm, old and not good at it. But we have to get our teachers to that 100%, because that's where we can start closing the equity gap and changing kids' lives in ways we haven't been able to before, and much more quickly. So that's a risk that's hovering. And how we're doing all of this now that I think is worth keeping on in the front of our mind as we even talk about the risk assessment. But certainly in terms of how we're looking at this in the next couple of years and how we're using, because we may conclude that, you know, it's too risky. This is my soapbox, I know, Dr. Dixon, but we may conclude that it's too risky to not provide teachers with, you know, a coach in every building or something that gets them to those higher levels of utilization. And that's a creative way to think about this risk. I mean, maybe even not a creative way, a more vital way to think about how we're looking at this. And, you know, it could drive some decision making, and it could put the board in a position where they have to figure out how to pay for it. You know, if you come up with an audit that says it's too great a risk for our children not to make sure that our teachers are teaching at the most transformative levels, but it's going to cost, you know, 3 more full-time equivalents in every building so they can be running around coaching the teachers, that's on us. But it's food for thought.
No, I think you hit the nail on the head, and I've definitely have had discussions with Dr. Dixon about professional development for our teachers. For those of you on the committee that may not know, we literally delayed our start time for the school year to allow for 2 more additional weeks of professional development for our teaching staff, to Board Member Beckerly's point. And one of the questions that I've had with Dr. Dixon over time is how are we prepared to make sure that we continue that? And as teachers identify what their needs are as they go through this, how do we make sure that we're continuing to get them up to speed? And this is all a part of it. And I think that was spot on, Board Member Beckerly. Any other thoughts on this particular subject? You will see that today's agenda is abbreviated, and I want to let you all know the reason why behind that. Board Member Beckerly and I will be engaging in a community engagement function immediately following our meeting today. This is part 2 of a community engagement session with a local partner that we've had for a while. And so they could not accommodate our meeting times after the first meeting. We needed to have another one. And so I appreciate you all allowing us to kind of make sure that we abbreviated this meeting today so that we could get off early enough to be able to support this community partnership that we have. And so that's why you'll see the abbreviated agenda today, and our stop time is a hard stop at 5 o'clock. So with that being said, I'm going to allow Madam Auditor to move to our next topic.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have the internal audit activity and dashboard report. Kevin O'Connor will lead you through that. Mr. O'Connor. Oh, I see you. There you go.
Yes, and Paul or Scott, if you're on, it says the host disabled the participant screen sharing. So I was going to share my screen, if that's possible, to go over the dashboard. All righty, there we go. Thank you, Scott or Paul. Good afternoon, all. Thanks for bearing with me there. I'm going to go over the dashboard today, and if people have questions, feel free to stop me at any time. I'm going to start on page 3. This is our bar graph of where we stand with our audits, our follow-ups, and our special projects, whether they're in the planning phase, the in progress, field work is completed, the report issued, or delayed. And again, the 3 that are delayed are the school audits from last year that we carried forward into this year. When schools shut down, staff was not available, the premises were not available to get in and do our audits. So we're waiting until staff comes back in, and we don't plan to meet them at the door, Dr. Dixon. We're going to allow them to do their work. And then once they get settled, then we'll get in there and finish those. There's no hurry on that. And there's no significant risk coming out of that we've seen so far. So just to give you a heads up on that, that's where we stand with that. Page 5 and page 6, same information as the bar graphs, just a little different format. And the same with 7, 8, and 9. You'll see there's the red chevrons for the school audit. And there is page 9. Page 10, there were no additions, deletions, or adjustments to the annual audit plan in the past month. We'll go to page 12. And this is where, if you remember our June meeting, we went over the corrective action plan status report for the treasurer's office. Once we went over that, they were able to identify those that are ready for our review. We put that column in there, and there's 35 of them that are ready for our review, and we're working on those currently. So we'll be reporting out to the committee here in the next couple months on where we stand with those and if they were successful validations or if some additional work needed done. Page 13 is a new slide. It goes over the external audit recommendations. So to just keep track of the auditor state audit report, WCBE, OIG, and the PDK curriculum audit.
Kevin, can I jump in here for a second?
Absolutely, Carol.
As far as the audits that you see on this screen, these are audits that were done by outside entities. So you'll see the asterisk that says the closing will be determined by the external entities for PDK. You know, the superintendent and I will be meeting to, you know, she'll let us know when an item is closed and if there's anything that she wants us to do. So this will look different based on the conversations that we had. We kind of started that conversation yesterday with Chair Ragland and Co-Chair Beckerly, and this slide was done before we had a chance to actually finalize this. So this will look differently. My initial thoughts was just to kind of keep track of, okay, like for the Auditor of State, you know, there's 5 recommendations that they have made. The Auditor of State will be the ones who come in and close those. And then what we like to do was on the Puccio report, come in and say, okay, you know, it looks like those will repeat or won't repeat. WCBE, I believe the Inspector General, we'll have to follow up to see what they plan to do, if anything, regarding the issues that they noted during their audit. And the same thing with PDK, you know, are they going to come in and do the follow-up? Is it going to be, you know, the superintendent staff? So we just want to keep track of the external entities that are coming in, how many recommendations they are making, and, you know, when they are determining that those issues are closed or have been addressed. So what you see today will look different next time based on those conversations that we have.
Great. Hey, Carolyn, may I ask a question, please, or Chair Ragland?
Go ahead.
I recall the email that you sent on, I think it was August 25th or August 26th on the, I know PDK was in that report, and we're going to talk about it at a future date. I'm just curious if there was a reason why internal audit wasn't used in that review or those reviews. Maybe it's just one topic we can cross at another date. I think it would have been beneficial to have had Carol and his team's involvement just from a continuity of review and knowledge, but that's just one person's perspective.
Why don't we put that in a topic for the next meeting?
That'd be fantastic.
We have been having extensive conversations with that, and we've been talking with some of our advisors from councils of great city schools, and I think that we're making a lot of progress on that, and it's a nuanced conversation. So let's put a pin in that for next meeting, okay?
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, let's just go ahead and include that as an agenda item, Madam Auditor.
Okay.
We'll have a little bit more time away from the meeting that just occurred, and we'll probably have a bit more substantive information to speak directly to your point, Greg. So yes, please, let's absolutely do that, and let's put it on the agenda.
Okay, will do. Sorry about that, Kevin.
Oh, no problem. Thanks for the input. Then on page 15, we just have a list of the staff professional development that we attended in the past month. 16 is different advising activities that we've joined with management to try and make sure that there's no obvious missteps going forward. And again, kudos to management for bringing us in on these things up front. And then just the one district group participation. We do have a representative internal audit with the Facilities Master Plan Committee. Page 18, you just see these are the where we're going to do in the next 3 months. We're going to continue and wrap up the capital improvement audit, the HR benefits, accounts payable, and continue to work on the issues and recommendations verification. We're going to continue planning the COVID-19 control validation. Again, we're in the process of gathering those controls to make sure that they continued working effectively during the pandemic, and if not, what we might need to do to make sure that we don't have a hiccup in those controls if something else happened. We're working on our quality assurance improvement program, the internal assessment. The external assessment was just completed last year, and we're only required to have that once every 5 years. And then the outsource IT risk assessment that we've been talking about today. And then just some ongoing activities, refresh the risk assessment, and then continue coordination work with the buildings and grounds equipment supply inventory, and then the HR audit follow-up and the fraud hotline. Page 21, there's a procedure strategy update. We presented the OIA fiscal year 21 budget to FAC, and we're continuing to get issues and recommendations into teammate. I think we've stumped their support group because they've been working on this there for probably a month, but we are trying to elevate that or escalate that within teammate to get resolution so we can finish entering all our stuff into the issues and recommendations tracking process. And then page 23 is just our budget, department personnel, and our table of organization. Any other questions on the dashboard? Well, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Auditor. We'll now move to item 3, financial reporting and the business and operations corrective action plans dashboard.
Yes, I thought I kicked myself out there for a second. Kevin O'Connor is going to also lead that. I believe our Chief of Operations, Mr. Odoms, is also available if there are any questions. So Mr. O'Connor, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. We had sent a more detailed listing in an Excel spreadsheet of each audit, the number of the recommendations that were made in total, and then which ones were ready for our review. And we felt that might be a little too busy to review at a meeting like this. So again, if you have questions, I have no problem fielding those questions, but this is more of a high level with just the audits down the left-hand side that we've done for business and operations. The number in parentheses is the number of recommendations we made during that audit. And there's the date that the audit came to Audit and Accountability Committee and was approved. And then we have a little bar graph over here with the blue are the closed ones. So for high risk, we had 19 that are closed. We have 11 that are ready for our review as per building or business and operations personnel. And then 34 still exist that we're working on, or they are working to get ready for our review. And then, so we did a column for high, a column for moderate, and a column for low. And I can take any questions that people might have regarding that.
Kevin, just one question. It's Greg.
Yes.
Are you concerned all about the aging of these issues that are outstanding? And more so just focus maybe on the high and medium ones?
Correct. And again, I think as you can see right there in the green, they were working on 11 high, 4 moderate, and 1 low, which is their focus is correct. And I gave Maurice and his staff kudos when they presented what was ready for our review, because that does concern us as the high and the moderates, significant moderates. So we are working with them to try and resolve those issues in that order.
And we're also working on something that we're working through teammates is to be able to show that aging as we have talked about. because something that, was done in 6/25 of 20 has a very different look, compared to something that was done in 6/22 of 17. So we are
Right.
working on that.
I mean, each organization is different. I guess I would offer up that where some of the thought leadership is headed, that issues that are outstanding, maybe 2 to 3 years, basically that the entity or business has accepted the risk. I know we're continuing to work those, but in essence, you've accepted the risk if the issue is still open.
Yeah, and I think, in terms of something like textbook accountability, I might actually be willing to live with that risk, but we have to make sure we're doing it intentionally. I mean, I don't really know what the issue is, but it just seems like we got a lot bigger things to worry about than keeping track of our textbooks. But and that's probably more glib than I should be. But let's make sure we know what we're intentional about living with certain risks, because I think we need to become more comfortable living with risks.
Right. To have some level of risk tolerance. Absolutely. Agree.
But it shouldn't be inadvertent.
That's very good, Kevin. Thank you. That was very insightful, though. The way you presented the materials was very good.
And again, if you have any recommendations on anything else you'd like to see, hey, feel free to suggest that. I did want to provide one update with the fleet services audit. When we presented that back in February, it did have $111,000 in change that were from voided checks due to stale dating. And they were able to get those reissued, and they have been deposited with the district. So kudos to them for getting that taken care of for the $111,000. Thanks, Maurice. Please send my thanks to your staff also. And that concludes my review of the business and operations corrective action plan status.
So, Mr. Odom, thank you for the hard work that you and your team are doing to make sure we get these items corrected. Did you have anything that you'd like to add to the discussion today?
Sure. Board Member Ragland, Board Member Beckley, and team members. We're working hard through these, and one of the questions I do want to point out, two of the audits that's dated, we've had some managerial changes in that area. But even that being said, we're still going to revisit those to make sure we're where we need to be. So again, we do take these audits very seriously to move our department in the right direction, and we'll keep moving forward and work with the internal audit to resolve those matters. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Seems like we have come to the end of our agenda. Dr. Dixon, I would like to allow you, if you have some final thoughts, you may weigh in time.
No, thank you. Good meeting as always. The team is doing a good job. So thank you, Carolyn, and your team for your work. And we'll continue to have some conversations about risk management and all of that other good stuff, that fun stuff, because we want to make sure we have the proper protocols and all of those procedures in place. And as a point that Carolyn brought up earlier, is that when we have these audits completed, we have to put some placeholders or something in place to make sure that people are following up with the with following through. We don't want any team member using their resources to do these assessments, evaluations, audits, whatever term we use, and then there's no evidence that we've done any correction in our organization, and that seems to be what's happening. And we have to put an end to that. So I understand the frustration that she and her team may be feeling when we see this is happening yet again. So, risk management is important. We want to make sure we protect the organization, and we put those protocols and procedures in place just so that we're protecting the organization. So we have to put something in place that's going to hold the organization accountable for making the corrections that the audit finds and brings to our attention. But thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Madam Auditor, any final thoughts for you? I know our next meeting is set for October 29 at 3:30. But any final thoughts from you, Madam Auditor, before I go to the committee?
I don't have final thoughts, but I would like for you all to look at your calendars and see, not right now, but probably very soon, to see if there is a date and time where you can meet in executive session to talk about my evaluation. I know it was short notice when I sent out the invite last week. So if you all can, if Ms. Edwards and I get together and throw out a couple of AM times and a couple of PM times, if you could let us know what works for you. I really do want to make sure that what I'm doing and what the department is doing is in alignment with the committee and the board. So I would appreciate that. So look for that communication.
And if I could just add, I sent a draft to the committee members. And we're basically, this is part of a bigger effort where we're trying to be much more intentional as a board in terms of goals and competencies that we're expecting of our direct reports, and making sure they're all consistent with each other and they're consistent of what the goals and our objectives for the organization are. And so we're looking for the committee's input, especially Mr. Valjean, Mr. Grant, and Mr. Jordan, to make sure that we are thinking about this correctly in terms of the function of the internal auditor. So we would really appreciate your input if you can find the time to meet with us to just talk about the structure and how we've set it up. It would be very much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. Final thoughts from the committee? Well, thank you very much for your time this afternoon and for your input. Definitely in these discussions, I feel really good about the direction in which we're going. Looking forward to our meeting in October. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to adjourn the meeting. Madam Auditor, please call the roll.
Ms. Beckerly,
Yes.
Mr. Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Badjon,
Yes.
Mr. Jordan,
Yes.
Chair Ragland.
Yes.
That motion carried.
We are
Thank you,
adjourned.
everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye
you.
now.
Thank you. Enjoy
Very
your
welcome.
evening.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Everybody stay safe. Take care.
Thanks. Bye.
Yes. Everybody stay safe. Bye-bye.